All right, we are live. Robin needs to go get her painting stuff, but I will start reading once I figure out where we are.
Right. I can help you with that.
Because Amroth, blah, blah, blah. Sam wants to go to sleep.
And the less said, the sooner I'll drop off if you take my meaning.
Oh, hey, that was much quicker than I thought it was going to be. All right. Frodo lay for some time awake and looked up at the stars glinting through the pale roof of quivering leaves. Sam was snoring at his side long before he himself closed his eyes. He could dimly see the gray forms of two elves sitting motionless with their arms about their knees, speaking in whispers. The other had gone down to take up his watch in one of the lower branches. At last, lulled by the wind in the boughs above and the sweet murmur of the falls of Nimrodel below, Frodo fell asleep with the song of Legolas running in his mind. Late in the night he awoke. The other hobbits were asleep. The elves were gone. The sickle moon was gleaming dimly among the leaves. The wind was still. A little way off he heard a harsh laugh and the tread of many feet on the ground below. There was a ring of metal. The sounds died slowly away and seemed to go southward on into the wood. A head appeared suddenly through the hole in the Flet. Frodo sat up in alarm and saw that it was a gray-hooded elf. He looked towards the hobbits. "What is it?" said Frodo. "Urch," said, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. YRCH, said the elf in a hissing whisper, and cast onto the Flet the rope ladder rolled up. "Orcs," said Frodo. "What are they doing?" But the elf had gone. There were no more sounds. Even the leaves were silent, and the very falls seemed to be hushed. Frodo sat and shivered in his wraps. He was thankful that they had not been caught on the ground, but he felt that the trees offered little protection except concealment. Orcs were as keen as hounds on a scent, it was said, but they could also climb. He drew out Sting. It flashed and glittered like a blue flame, and then slowly faded again and grew dull. In spite of the fading of his sword, the feeling of immediate danger did not leave Frodo. Rather, it grew stronger. He got up and crawled to the opening and peered down. He was almost certain that he could hear stealthy movements at the tree's foot, far below. As a side note here, I read a thing on the internet that was talking about playing a character who had a goblin detecting sword like Sting, but who is a goblin and thinks it's just a magic shiny sword.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
That's awesome. Wrong button. That's hilarious. Yeah.
That'd be
Can
funny.
you see my painting?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to drink some tea. 1 moment.
Ooh. This is weird. This paint ought to be dry. It's been days.
It's been very humid.
Yeah. And it's a weird brand of paint that's kind of unpredictable.
And damned unpredictable paint.
Right.
All right. So Frodo could hear a noise at the tree's foot far below.
Right.
Not elves, for the woodland folk were altogether noiseless in their movements. Then he heard faintly a sound like sniffing, and something seemed to be scrabbling on the bark of the tree trunk. He stared down into the dark, holding his breath. Something was now climbing slowly, and its breath came like a soft hissing through closed teeth.
Ooh.
Then, coming up, close to the stem, Frodo saw two pale eyes. They stopped and gazed upward, unwinking. Suddenly they turned away, and a shadowy figure slipped round the trunk of the tree and vanished. Immediately afterwards, Haldir came climbing swiftly up through the branches. "There was something in this tree that I have never seen before," he said. "It was not an orc. It fled as soon as I touched the tree stem. It seemed to be wary and to have some skill in trees, or I might have thought that it was one of you hobbits. I did not Geez, why does everybody nag the hobbits all the time?
Man, it was ugly. It was awful. It looked kind of like you.
Right? It was good at climbing trees. Otherwise, I would have thought it was you. Like, hey, man.
Hey.
Like, granted, hobbits are not good at climbing trees. It's not their stage. But come on, don't gotta
Yeah,
be. You don't gotta be a bitch about it.
they gotta be a bitch. They have decided to be bitches.
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 I did not shoot, for I dared not arouse any cries. We cannot risk battle. A strong company of orcs has passed. They crossed the Nimmerdale, cursed their foul feet in its clean water, and went on down the old road beside the river. They seemed to pick up some scent, and they searched the ground for a while near the place where you halted. The three of us could not challenge 100, so we went ahead and spoke with feigned voices, leading them on into the wood. Orphan has now gone in haste back to our dwellings to warn our people. None of the orcs will ever return out of Lorien, and there will be many elves hidden on the northern border before another night falls. But you must take the road south as soon as it is fully light. Day came pale from the east. As the light grew, it filtered through the yellow leaves of the malorn, and it seemed to the hobbits that the early sun of a cool summer's morning was shining. Pale blue sky peeped among the moving branches. Looking through an opening on the south side of the Flet, Frodo saw all the valley of the Silverlode lying like a sea of fallow gold, tossing gently in the breeze. The morning was still young and cold when the company set out again, guided now by Haldir and his brother Rumil. "Farewell, sweet Nimmerdale," cried Legolas. Frodo looked back and caught a gleam of white foam among the grey tree stems. "Farewell," he said. It seemed to him that he would never hear again a running water so beautiful, forever blending its innumerable notes in an endless changeful music. They went back to the path that still went on along the west side of the Silverlode, and for some way they followed it southward. There were the prints of orc feet in the earth. But soon Haldir turned aside into the trees and halted on the bank of the river under their shadows. "There is one of my people yonder across the stream," he said, "though you may not see him." He gave a call like the low whistle of a bird, and out of a thicket of young trees an elf stepped, clad in grey, but with his hood thrown back. His hair glinted like gold in the morning sun. Haldir skilfully cast over the stream a coil of grey rope, and he caught it and bound the end about a tree near the bank. "Celebrant is already a strong stream here, as you see," said Haldir, "and it runs both swift and deep, and is very cold. We do not set foot in it so far north unless we must, but in these days of watchfulness we do not make bridges. This is how we cross. Follow me." He made his end of the rope fast about another tree, and then ran lightly along it, over the river and back again, as if he were on a road. "Yeah, thanks, dude. Very helpful."
Right? What? You mean you can't? You mean not everyone is born a Cirque du Soleil uh acrobat?
"I can walk this path," said Legolas, "but the others have not this skill. Must they swim?" "No," said Haldir. "We have two more ropes. We will fasten them above the other, one shoulder high and another half high, and holding these, the strangers should be able to cross with care." Um, okay. Look, I
Uh,
appreciate the thought, but I'm going to tell you right now that I can't walk on a tightrope even if there's another rope to hold on to.
especially knowing the way ropes behave when you're standing on one and holding on to another. The the
Hmm.
the, the way physics will treat you is not kind.
Yeah, like if I was given this option, I would end up drowning. That's just a
But
fact.
I would at least end up wet. I would probably end up like towing my way along the rope while the rest of me was in the water.
Either that or just like sitting down on the rope and kind of scooching along. That might work a little better.
Rope burn on your butt. Ow.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a great solution. My point is, this is not a great plan.
It is a terrible plan. But,
Anyway,
they're not used to accommodating people who aren't elvish.
racists. With when this slender bridge had been made, let's not call that a bridge. The company passed
Yes,
over.
bridge, no.
Huh?
Slender, yes. Bridge, no.
Yes, exactly. The company passed over, some cautiously and slowly, others more easily. Of the hobbits, Pippin proved the best, for he was sure-footed, and he walked over quickly, holding only with one hand. but he kept his eyes on the bank ahead and did not look down. Sam shuffled along, clutching hard and looking down into the pale eddying water as if it was a chasm in the mountains. He breathed with relief when he was safely across. Live and learn, as my gaffer used to say, though he was thinking of gardening, not of roosting like a bird, nor of trying to walk like a spider. Not even my Uncle Andy ever did a trick like that. Is Andy's full name like Andwise?
Oh, that's a good question. He shows up in the appendices. I think it's just Andrew.
Well, that's boring. It should at least be like Andward or something.
Andward. Andward's my new headcanon. Andward! Timing ropes, mother!
Any name that ends with D, I always want to put word at the end. So, like, my friend Brad, I call Bradward all the time.
Oh, that reminds me. I bought some Edward Easy books for Avi, and I haven't read them. I was like, I've read Half Magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't read Knight's Castle or The Well-Wishers, and Abby was like, well, you read them first, and then I'll read them. And I was like, okay. I start reading The Knight's Castle, and it turns out, so it's been years since I read Half Magic, but that's about 4 kids, four siblings. In Knight's Castle, the 4 kids are grown up and have kids, and those kids are having adventures. And it wasn't until like midway through chapter 2 that I was like, who's coming?
Yeah. Hi, Abby.
Hello.
It wasn't until midway through chapter 2 that it mentions that Catherine blushed, and if you've read Half Magic, you know why. And I was like, oh! And then I went to look for our copy of Half Magic, and I couldn't find it because my bookcases eat books, and I'm sad.
I'm sorry.
We shall have to buy it again.
Yeah.
And then we'll have 2 copies because the other one will turn up.
Yeah. Someone on my Instagram had a picture of a copy of the Firestone, and I was like, where did you find that? And then I realized it was really old.
Oh, check. Drea just bought one online.
Oh, it might have been Drea then.
It's where we need to go, apparently. Okay, enough with you. Podcasting time. Go play.
I have a question.
All right, I will answer your question. What is it?
Can I spend free time now?
No.
Why not?
It can pause for now, okay? Go watch your screens, and when I'm done with my podcast, we'll turn them off again. Shut the door! Thank you. Any hoozles. Yes, it was very interesting to discover that the kids from Half Magic had continuing, like, shared universe books. And,
well, Half Magic was the sequel to some other book that we never had, wasn't it? Because it had the Sand Fairy?
No, because that was E. Nesbit.
And okay. Right, that was, yeah, 5 Children, and it was the book that was the sequel to something else, where they initially met the Samiad, which we never had.
Yes, and oh god, I keep doing this. Edward Easy or Edgar Easy, I can never remember which one, but he read a bunch of E. Nesbit, and so the kids in his books read E. Nesbit. So he mentioned that the kid is thinking about Samiads, and like they talk about the books their dad reads aloud to them, and I really like the way he writes, like with homage rather than theft of other books. Yeah.
Homage is always better.
Homage is always better.
All right, let's see. Not even Sam's Uncle Andy ever did a trick like that. That's where we started talking about that.
That's right.
When at length all the company was gathered on the east bank of the Silverlode, the elves untied the ropes and coiled 2 of them. Rumil, who had remained on the other side, drew back the last one, slung it on his shoulder, and with a wave of his hand went away, back to Nimmerdale to keep watch. Now, friends, said Haldir, you have entered the Naith of Lorien, or the Gore, as you would say, For it is the land that lies like a spearhead between the arms of Silverlode and Anduin the Great.
I would not.
All right, I'm like, I have never called a piece of land a gore in my life. I feel like it must mean like gores and sewing, like a triangular piece. But
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense, but I'm like, wow, that's a probably 1910s British thing that I've never heard of. Let's see.
You have now.
We allow no strangers to spy out the secrets of the Nath. Few indeed are permitted even to set foot there. As was agreed, I shall here blindfold the eyes of Gimli the dwarf. The others may walk free for a while until we come nearer to our dwellings down in Egladil in the angle between the waters. This was not at all to the liking of Gimli, no shit, because it's racist.
Yeah.
The agreement was made without my consent, he said. I will not walk blindfold like a beggar or a prisoner. And I am no spy. My folk have never had dealings with any of the servants of the enemy. Neither have we done harm to the elves. I am no more likely to betray you than Legolas or any other of my companions.
Good point.
I do not doubt you, said Haldir. Yet this is our law. I am not the master of the law and cannot set it aside. I have done much in letting you set foot over Celebrant.
Just
Gimli,
doing my job.
Right. Great excuse.
Yeah.
Gimli was obstinate. He planted his feet firmly apart and laid his hand upon the haft of his axe. I will go forward free, he said, or I will go back and seek my own land where I am known to be true of word, though I perish alone in the wilderness. You tell him, Gimli.
Yeah.
You cannot go back, said Haldir sternly. Now you have come thus far, you must be brought before the Lord and the Lady. They shall judge you, to hold you, or to give you leave as they will. You cannot cross the rivers again, and behind you there are now secret sentinels that you cannot pass. You would be slain before you saw them. Gimli drew his axe from his belt. Haldir and his companion bent their bows. A plague on dwarves and their stiff necks, said Legolas. Come, said Aragorn, who now speaks up. Like, why did you let it get this far, dude? Come on.
Right.
Come, said Aragorn. If I am still to lead this company, you must do as I bid. It is hard upon the dwarf to be thus singled out. We will all be blindfold, even Legolas. That will be best, though it will make the journey slow and dull. Gimli laughed suddenly. A merry troop of fools we shall look. Will Haldir lead us all on a string, like many blind beggars with one dog? But I will be content if only Legolas here shares my blindness.
Ha ha ha.
I am an elf and a kinsman here, said Legolas, becoming angry in his turn. Hypocrite. Now let us cry, a plague on the stiff necks of elves, said Aragorn. Thank you.
Yep. Gimli knew just what to say to piss him off. I love Gimli so much.
Gimli's the best.
He is.
But the company shall all fare alike. Come, blind our eyes, Haldir. I shall claim full amends for every fall and stubbed toe if you do not lead us well, said Gimli as they bound a cloth about his eyes. Okay, come on.
Mm-hmm.
You will have no claim, said Haldir. I shall lead you well, and the paths are smooth and straight.
And beautiful. Oh God, you're missing so much. Anyway, here you go.
Alas, for the folly of these days, said Legolas. Here all are enemies of the one enemy, and yet I must walk blind while the sun is merry in the woodland under leaves of gold.
Wah.
Folly it may seem, said Haldir. Indeed, in nothing is the power of the Dark Lord more clearly shown than in the estrangement that divides all those who still oppose him. Yet so little faith and trust do we find now in the world beyond Lothlorien, unless maybe in Rivendell, that we dare not by our own trust endanger our land. We live now upon an island amid many perils, and our hands are more often upon the bowstring than upon the harp. The rivers long defended us, but they are a sure guard no more, for the shadow has crept northward all about us. Some speak of departing, yet for that it already seems too late. The mountains to the west are growing evil. To the east, the lands are full of waste, and full of Sauron's creatures. And it is rumored that we cannot now pass safely southward through Rohan, and the mouths of the great river are watched by the enemy. Even if we could come to the shores of the sea, we should find no longer any shelter there. Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah.
It is said that there are still havens of the High Elves, but they are far north and west beyond the land of the Halflings. But where that may be, though the Lord and Lady may know, I do not. You ought at least to guess, since you have seen us, said Mary. Wow, I'm fucking up Mary's accent today, that's fine. Said Mary. There are elf havens west of my land, the Shire, where hobbits live. Happy folk are hobbits, to dwell near the shores of the sea, said Haldir. It is long indeed since any of my folk have looked on it, yet still we remember it in a song. Tell me of these havens as we walk. I cannot, said Mary. I have never seen them. I have never been out of my own land before, and if I had known what the world outside was like, I don't think I should have had the heart to leave it. Not even to see fair Lothlorien, said Haldir. The world is indeed... Right. I'm like, hang on a second. He's blindfolded, dude. Too soon. Yeah. The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places. But still there is much that is fair, though in all lands love is now mingled with grief. It grows perhaps the greater. Soon some there are among us who sing that the shadow will draw back, and peace shall come again. Yet I do not believe that the world about us will ever again be as it was of old, or the light of the sun as it was aforetime. For the elves, I fear, it will prove at best a truce, in which they may pass to the sea unhindered and leave the Middle-earth forever. Alas for Lothlorien that I love! It would be a poor life in a land where no malorn grew. But if there are malorn trees beyond the great sea, none have reported it. As they spoke thus...
Seeds, I'm sorry, that...
Right, bring seeds with you, come on.
Loud. Not like there's a customs in the Undying Lands.
I mean, there must be something, because they only accept elves and ring bearers, so they have to check it somehow.
No, the others just can't get there. The world is folded for anyone who isn't one of them.
Yeah, that doesn't count for seeds. Bring them.
Right? Exactly.
They're going to take a long time to grow, but you got time. You're an elf.
Got nothing but time.
As they spoke thus, the company filed slowly along the paths in the wood, led by Haldir, while the other elf walked behind. They felt the ground beneath their feet smooth and soft, and after a while they walked more freely, without fear of hurt or fall. Being deprived of sight, Frodo found his hearing and other senses sharpened. He could smell the trees and the trodden grass. He could hear many different notes in the rustle of the leaves overhead, the river murmuring away on his right, and the thin, clear voices of birds in the sky. He felt the sun upon his face and hands when they passed through an open glade. As soon as he set foot upon the far bank of Silverlode, a strange feeling had come upon him, and it deepened as he walked on into the Nath. It seemed to him that he had stepped over a bridge of time into a corner of the elder days, and was now walking in a world that was no more. In Rivendell there was memory of ancient things. In Lorien the ancient things still lived on in the waking world. Evil had been seen and heard there, sorrow had been known. The elves feared and distrusted the world outside. Wolves were howling on the wood's borders, but on the land of Lorien no shadow lay. All that day the company marched on until they felt the cool evening come and heard the early night wind whispering among many leaves. Then they rested and slept without fear upon the ground, for their guides would not permit them to unbind their eyes, and they could not climb. In the morning they went on again, walking without haste. At noon they halted, and Frodo was aware that they had passed out under the shining sun. Suddenly he heard the sound of many voices all around him. A marching host of elves had come up silently. My God, can you imagine how terrifying that would be? You're just like, la 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 la, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by people you didn't know were there. What the fuck, man? They were hastening towards the northern borders to guard against any attack from Moria, and they brought news, some of which Haldir reported. The marauding orcs had been waylaid and almost all destroyed. The remnant had fled westward towards the mountains and were being pursued. A strange creature had also been seen, running with bent back and with hands near the ground, like a beast and yet not of beast shape. It had eluded capture, and they had not shot it, not knowing whether it was good or ill, and it had vanished down the Silverlode southward.
Every single race in Middle-earth gets a chance to kill Gollum, and the fact that they don't, that they hesitate, that their first instinct is not to shoot, is the reason the world gets saved.
Yeah, there's a lesson in that, one thinks.
Yeah. Yep. It's a test. It's a really weird test by Iluvatar. Like, let's put the salvation of everything in the hands of something vile and see who kills it.
That dragon looks really cool looking.
Thank you. It's Radon.
Very nice. Right. Where am I here? Also, said Haldir, they bring me a message from the Lord and Lady of the Galadrim. You are all to walk free, even the dwarf Gimli. It seems that the lady knows who and what is each member of your company. New messages have come from Rivendell, perhaps. He removed the bandage first from Gimli's eyes. Your pardon, he said, bowing low. Look on us now with friendly eyes. Look and be glad, for you are the first dwarf to behold the trees of the nave of Lorien since Durin's day. When his eyes were in turn uncovered, Frodo looked up and caught his breath. They were standing in an open space. To the left stood a great mound covered with a sward of grass as green as springtime in the elder days. Upon it, as a double crown, grew 2 circles of trees. The outer had bark of snowy white and were leafless but beautiful in their shapely nakedness. It's a weird way to describe trees, but okay.
Right? Kind of hot, frankly.
I'm like, Tolkien, we need to have a chat.
No, we all knew.
There's a reason he talks about trees so much.
An arbophile?
Anyway, the inner
gets hurt.
The inner were Malorn trees of great height, still arrayed in pale gold. High amid the branches of a towering tree that stood in the center of all, there gleamed a white Flet. At the feet of the trees and all about the green hillsides, the grass was studded with small golden flowers shaped like stars. Among them, nodding on slender stalks, were other flowers, white and palest green. They glimmered as a mist amid the rich hue of the grass. Over all, the sky was blue, and the sun of afternoon glowed upon the hill and cast long green shadows beneath the trees. Behold, you are come to Cairn Amroth, said Haldir, for this is the heart of the ancient realm as it was long ago, and here is the mound of Amroth, where in happier days his high house was built. Here ever bloom the winter flowers and the unfading grass, the yellow Eleanor and the pale Nifril. Here we will stay a while and come to the city of the Galadrim at dusk. The others cast themselves down upon the fragrant grass, but Frodo stood a while lost in wonder. It seemed to him that he had stepped through a high window that looked on a vanished world. A light was upon it for which his language had no name. All that he saw was shapely, but the shapes seemed at once clear-cut, as if they had been first conceived and drawn at the uncovering of his eyes, and ancient as if they had endured forever. He saw no color but those he knew, gold and white and blue and green, but they were fresh and poignant, as if he had at that moment first perceived them and made for them names new and wonderful. In winter here no heart could mourn for summer or for spring. No blemish or sickness or deformity could be seen in anything that grew upon the earth. On the land of Lorien there was no stain. He turned and saw that Sam was now standing beside him, looking round with a puzzled expression, and rubbing his eyes as if he was not sure that he was awake. "It's sunlight and bright day, right enough," he said. "I thought that elves were all for moon and stars, but this is more elvish than anything I ever heard tell of. I feel as if I was inside a song, if you take my meaning." Haldir looked at them, and he seemed indeed to take the meaning of both thought and word. He smiled. "You feel the power of the Lady of the Galadrim," he said. "Would it please you to climb with me up Cairn Amroth?" They followed him as he stepped lightly up the grass-clad slopes. Though he walked and breathed, and about him living leaves and flowers were stirred by the same cool wind as fanned his face, Frodo felt that he was in a timeless land that did not fade or change or fall into forgetfulness. When he had gone and passed again into the outer world, still Frodo the Wanderer from the Shire would walk there, upon the grass, among Elenor and Nifredil in fair Lothlorien. Okay, so there's a really interesting thing with this description, right? Because it's all because of the power of Galadriel's ring. She's wielding one of the three to preserve her land, and that's why it feels so weirdly timeless.
Yep.
Which makes me think about, like, that's actually kind of not necessarily a good thing, right? Like, lands need, like, things need to change. You can't just hold things in stasis like that forever. So even though everyone who comes there is like, "Oh my God, this is so beautiful and amazing and I love it," and like, that's the point of it, I don't actually think it's a good thing that she's doing. I think it's probably for the best that she stops after the War of the Ring.
Yeah, I feel like there's my mouth. Okay. I feel like it's not that she keeps everything in stasis. I think it's that she keeps it from rotting, from deteriorating. Like, no matter how well you build something, it's gonna fall apart. The plumbing, the lighting, the whatever, the shit just falls apart. And here, nothing falls apart.
But that is stasis, though, because rotting and deteriorating is a natural part of the passage of time. The only way to keep something from rotting is to keep it from changing at all. That's why Frodo feels like even after he leaves, he's still going to be here, because there's a sense that time is being held back.
I don't know. I mean, you're probably right, but I never saw it that way. I like to picture it more like a control over the processes than a halting of the processes. Like, things that she doesn't want to rot don't rot. But do you really think they don't have gardens with like compost heaps and it's like under her control, but that doesn't mean that it's like, I don't know.
That's not really what I'm talking about, though, because like I don't think Tolkien sees it as a bad thing either, but just like, I don't know, having control over the processes of your environment is such a particular sort of Western European way of interacting with nature. Also, is part of why I'm not super big on it, because it's not really, they're not living in full harmony with everything that happens in their land. They're only allowing the things to happen in their land that they can, Galadriel's only allowing the things to happen that she considers to be positive.
Yeah.
So like after they leave Lothlorien, I would be really interested to imagine what happens, because I imagine it all falls apart really, really fast. Like everything that she's been holding back.
Like it's been waiting to.
And then something new can grow there. Maybe the Malorn trees can finally evolve into something, or the nature of the wood can change in a way that it hasn't been allowed to. And there's this, and there's like a sense of like, oh, grieving for what was. And it's like, sure, but what was there, this Lorien that Frodo goes to, has been unnaturally held in place for like thousands of years, past when it would normally have changed.
But that's another thing that makes it like a necessary reprieve, is because elves are immortal, so they don't feel the passage of time. So if they were living in a place that didn't have that controlled growth and decay, like controlled to elvish timescales, they would constantly be having to deal with shit falling apart all the time, like in their perspective. If you have a perspective of infinity, then to have the processes of nature at least slowed down to a sedate walk rather than what would feel like freaking scampering chipmunks.
Yeah, I wonder about that just in terms of the concept of immortality, though, because it's like when you talk about any immortal being, right, vampires or whatever, it's like you would have to, things would feel like they were moving so fast versus this like time scale of your life, that in order to cope with immortality, you would almost have to be incredibly mentally flexible, which I realize is not the case for the elves, extremely not. But like when thinking about what that would actually be like, you would have to almost be able to just like change your entire thought process on a dime over and over and over again and let go of what was passing. And I think that's where the elves really have problems, is they can't let go of the past.
And but they do when they're just traveling. They're really like living in the moment, very, very Taoist. Whenever we meet the ones that are going from here to there, they're really good at adapting, but it must be so nice for them to arrive at a place where they can just drop that for a while. That might be one of the reasons Lothlorien is such a holy land to them, is because they don't have to adapt. They can leave for what feels like a few months, and it turns out to be hundreds of years, and come back and shit is where they left it. Like their books aren't going to be eaten by mice. Their houses aren't going to be tumbled down and decayed. Like, it must be that part of the magic of Galadriel's ring is that it doesn't feel stagnant. It just feels peaceful, restful.
And I think that maybe in the end, that's why the elves had to leave and go to the Undying Lands where that's the case, right? Where time doesn't pass.
Because
in the same way. Well, because you get so tired, and also because it's good for them to be able to hold their lands in that kind of way. And it's really bad for Middle Earth, is my contention. I don't think that it's like, maybe at one point the processes of Middle Earth were slower and they could do that, right? But now in the fourth age after the ring?
After the ring is fourth, yeah.
Yeah, in the fourth age, the land can't handle that anymore. It's no longer living in harmony to hold it in place. Now it's forcing something on it that's unhealthy. And I think ultimately that's why the elves have to go.
It's time. It's time for their attitudes to be supplanted, and yeah, at least they recognize that, and they're like, okay, cool, we're done here.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost to the end of the chapter, but I just got off track there because I was thinking philosophical thoughts.
Right. One more thing. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things about Tolkien's elves is that at this point in the Third Age, all of the ones we meet are fair and generous and gentle and kind and wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
They aren't that way in the Silmarillion. When elves first arrive on the scene, they're about like people. There's some evil ones, there's some selfish ones, there's ones that make really stupid vows, there's smart and clever ones that fuck up real bad. And it's kind of neat that Tolkien's conception of immortality is that all of those petty venal type characteristics would get scrubbed, would eventually go away. Those people die. They die through their own folly. And what's left, it's like he's imagining that if humanity was allowed immortality, what you would end up with after a couple thousand years is that the only ones left would be the ones who are wise and gentle and learned from mistakes and stuff. And I think that's very optimistic.
Yeah, he's a real utopian dude sometimes. All right. They entered the circle of white trees. As they did so, the south wind blew upon Karen Amroth and sighed among the branches. Frodo stood still, hearing far off great seas upon beaches that had long ago been washed away, and seabirds crying whose race had perished from the earth. Haldir had gone on, and was now climbing to the high Flet. As Frodo prepared to follow him, he laid his hand upon the tree beside the ladder. Never before had he been so suddenly and so keenly aware of the feel and texture of a tree's skin, and of the life beneath it. He felt a delight in wood and the touch of it, neither as forester nor as carpenter. It was the delight of the living tree itself. As he stepped out at last upon the lofty platform, Haldir took his hand and turned him toward the south. "Look this way first," he said. Frodo looked and saw, still at some distance, a hill of many mighty trees, or his city of green towers. Which it was he could not tell. Out of it seemed to him that the power and light came that held all the land in sway. He longed suddenly to fly like a bird, to rest in the green city. Then he looked eastward and saw all the land of Lorien running down to the pale gleam of Anduin, the great river. He lifted his eyes across the river, and all the light went out, and he was back again in the world he knew. Beyond the river the land appeared flat and empty, formless and vague, until far away it rose again like a wall, dark and drear. The sun that lay on Lothlorien had no power to enlighten the shadow of that distant height. "There lies the fastness of southern Mirkwood," said Haldir. "It is clad in a forest of dark fir, where the trees strive one against the other, and their branches rot and wither. In the midst, upon a stony height, stands Dol Guldur, where long the enemy had his dwelling. We fear now that it is inhabited again, and with power sevenfold. A black cloud lies often over it of late. In this high place you may see the two powers that are opposed one to another, and ever they strive now in thought. But whereas the light perceives the very heart of the darkness, its own secret has not been discovered. Not yet." He turned and climbed swiftly down, and they followed him. At the hill's foot, Frodo found Aragorn, standing still and silent as a tree, but in his hand there was a small golden bloom of Elenor, and a light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him, he knew that he beheld things as they had once been in this same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord, tall and fair, and he spoke words in the Elvish tongue to one whom Frodo could not see. "Arwen van Imelda, the Marie," he said. And then he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought, he looked at Frodo and smiled. "Here is the heart of Elvendom on earth," he said, "and here my heart dwells ever, unless there be a light beyond the dark roads that we still must tread, you and I. Come with me." And taking Frodo's hand in his, he left the hill of Caren Amroth, and came there never again as living man. That is a sad place to stop.
Right?
He's like, "Here, this is my favorite place on earth. My heart will live here forever. Anyways, let's go." And then he never goes back. Like, what the fuck?
And that is the hill where Arwen ends up dying.
Oh, wow. That's even sadder.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
She can't just like die on purpose without a great effort, and she's wandering the world after Aragorn has left her, and she's like just this bleak wisp of a ghost woman, and she comes to Caren Amroth, which is where she was happiest, and everyone's gone. Her mother's people have left. There's like a half a dozen people still living on Caras Galadhon, and the magic has left it, and so she goes to the hill where her true love proposed and lays down, and grass grows over her. And that's the end of Arwen. You're like, but damn it.
Well, now I'm depressed.
Well, she insists on dying because, well, she could have totally taken a ship with Legolas and Gimli. She wants to see her man again. And she can't do that if she's in the Undying Lands.
Sure.
I don't think I would have made that choice. Honestly, I think I would have gone and seen my father and been like, okay, I had my 200 years with my one true love. Now I want to spend some time with you.
Man, I don't know, because either choice is irreversible, right? If she goes to the Undying Lands, she can't die, so she can't ever see Aragorn again.
Yeah. Yeah, no changing your mind. No backsies.
No backsies. And if she stays and dies, then she can't ever obviously change that decision either. Man, I might make the same choice that she did, because eternity is a long time to be without someone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And like, yeah, you might want to spend a few hundred years with your dad, but then, because again, time doesn't pass for her, so that the grief is never going to get better.
No matter where she is.
Yeah, that's like the drawback again of the elves' kind of stasis way of existing, is that grief doesn't fade.
Nope. Ugh. But if you die, there's some hope, even though you're not really given any guarantee that you would end up with your people, with your lover again.
Yeah. I can't imagine that she didn't. Like, come on. Come on now.
Right. Iluvatar is a fair and just god.
And they did save the world, like, a bunch.
Yeah, they totally did.
Oh, all right. Well, on that slightly happier note, I'm going to go make some breakfast.
All right. Enjoy your breakfast. I love you.
I love you too.
I will probably be done with Radon next time. It's my what times?
Oh, tell you what. Let's take this coming week off, because I'm going to be adjusting my sleep schedule, so I'm going to be freaking wiped. And then let's reconvene next Sunday and talk about what days and times.
Sunday it is. Noon again?
Yeah.
All right. See you then. Love you.
Love you too.
Cuidado.
Llamas.